The name of Charles Borromeo is associated with reform. He lived during the time of the Protestant Reformation and had a hand in the reform of the whole church during the final years of the Council of Trent. Saint Charles Borromeo was born on October 2nd, 1538, at the Castle of Arona on Lake Maggiore near Milan. Many sources recount that the birth of the saint was announced by a brilliant light that appeared above the castle, illuminating the night from 2 in the morning, the time of his birth, until daybreak. His father was the Count of Arona, and his mother a member of the House of Medici. He was the second son of distinguished and wealthy parents who raised him in an extremely religious atmosphere. When he was 12, he was given tonsure, which is the cutting of hair on top of the head. This marked him for the priesthood, and he was educated with that goal in mind. Young Charles suffered from a speech impediment that made him appear slow to those who did not know him. Despite this challenge, he performed well and impressed his teachers. Charles, even as a very little boy, was very careful that in his dress and his conduct there should not be the slightest thing unbecoming in one who hoped to consecrate himself to the special service of God. In 1554, his father passed away, and although Charles was a teenager, the responsibility of his household fell on him. Yet he studied hard to receive a doctorate in civil and canon law from the University of Pavia in 1559. Life sped up for Charles when his uncle, Pope Pius IV, took him to Rome and appointed him as cardinal deacon. The young Borromeo used his leadership role in the Vatican to promote learning, and he established a literary academy. In 1560, at the age of 22, Charles was appointed administrator of the Archdiocese of Milan. He was assigned to an important role, and many dignitaries came to meet him. Yet, he only thought of the work he could do for God and the Church, remaining as humble and free as if he had been poor and unknown. Charles had already developed a reputation as a young, idealistic reformer in Rome, and he continued that mission in Milan. He established hospitals, orphanages, and other charitable institutions. Borromeo nevertheless had the support of many religious congregations, including his own Oblates of St. Ambrose. As Archbishop, Charles embarked on some important reforms within the church. He shut down corrupt monastic orders. This led to a failed assassination attempt twice on his life later. He demanded that priests should take pastoral care of those entrusted to them. He saw that many of the clergy at that time were ignorant, and so he founded schools, colleges, and seminaries for clergy to be educated in the truth of the church. In 1562, his brother died, and his family urged him to leave the service of the church to preserve the family name. However, Borromeo refused. He became more insistent upon becoming a good bishop. Charles is a saint for our time because of his actions during the pandemic in Milan in the 1570s. In a pandemic not too dissimilar to the one we are facing now, Charles led his priests to care for the people of Milan. When the city officials ran away from danger, Charles ran towards it. he prepared himself for death, wrote his will, and went to the hospitals where cases were worst. In today's terms, St. Charles was most certainly a key worker. As a priest, he administered the sacraments to those who were dying. He gave the Eucharist to plague victims through their open windows. There's even a story of him climbing a mount of dead bodies to give the sacrament of the sick to a man dying at the top. He was a great reformer, and he spared no one, including himself, while imposing the strictest discipline for the order. The church had fallen into days of corruption, dishonesty, and immorality. This naturally raised up against him an army of enemies, and they teamed up together against the bishop. Soon, an assassin was hired to kill him. Late on a November afternoon, Charles was celebrating the evening service in his own chapel. He was on his knees at the altar. Behind him, the people were atoning in anthem. And the assassin fired multiple shots at the bishop. Somehow, none of the shots harmed him, and they were deflected. Only one managed to graze him slightly. It could only have been the wings of the angels which caused this miracle. When the people around him rushed to the assistance of their beloved father, he ordered them to their knees again, and with unshaken calm, he proceeded with the service. Charles forbade himself all luxury, reduced his household staff, forbade his retainers to accept any presents, and sold all of his property to help feed the poor. There was not a town or village to which he did not go. Everywhere he renewed the churches, preached, gave instructions, administered the holy sacraments, and exhorted all to lead a Christian life. Work and the heavy burdens of his high office began to affect Archbishop Borromeo's health. He fasted almost daily, and in the last years of his life, just on water and bread. During the 40 days fast, he even abstained from bread. Toward the end of October, in the year 1584, Charles had been traveling to some outlying districts in the diocese. On the way home, he fell ill with a heavy fever and had to be brought back to Milan on a stretcher. When he became obvious that he would die, he was given his last sacraments. He died on November 3rd at the age of 46. 26 years after his death in 1610, he was canonized by Pope Paul V and is the patron saint of catechists. Saint Charles Borromeo has a beautiful shrine in the Milan Cathedral and is often depicted in art wearing his robes, barefoot, carrying the cross with a rope around his neck and his arm raised in blessing. St. Charles Borromeo saw Christ in his neighbor and knew that charity done for the least of his flock was charity done for Christ. His winning gentleness, his deep humility, and his perfection in other virtues. He, however, closed early a life so fruitful in good and great deeds.